Hey guys, hope you're doing well. I'm your host, Tyranno Senpai, and welcome to another Dinosauria Series reaction video. I believe this is the next day of me uploading this, my previous reaction where I reacted to Old Buck, as long as I actually fall through with it. I'm so sorry. I have a very bad hangover, because last night I was partying to celebrate my 22nd birthday, so yay, happy birthday to me! Ha ha! It's all technical. My birthday was really Tuesday earlier this week, as of recording this. But I decided to celebrate it yesterday. And I decided that I was gonna go ahead and watch the making of the Old Buck Dinosauria documentary. Now, I have not seen this, and this upload is over a day old, so I am late. I am sorry. I've been busy around the house trying to make it all clean, vacuuming, pulling up bushes, things like that, so I couldn't do this reaction because we were going to be having people over. But now that it's all kind of calmed down and everyone's left, I think I can go ahead and do this video. And of course, I will also be doing a Beast of the Mesozoic recording today, because we got some news covering that. I don't know if I'll upload it today. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll find out. If I do upload it today, you guys get a double feature. Yay! But yeah, basically this whole thing's just getting into like the whole story that is, what was it? The making of Old Buck, and I'm excited to see it because I don't think I've seen a lot of YouTubers do like a behind the scenes thing when they show the process of how they make an animation like this. So I'm excited about this, watching this animation making of series. And yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get started with watching the video. Also, this time I will remember to turn off the music that I had playing in the background, because I completely forgot to do that. So, without further ado, let's get to it.
Hello,
Ooh.
My name is David, and welcome to the first of many behind-the-scenes videos I'll be making covering my Dinosauria series.
Beast of the Mesozoic!
Dinosauria series isn't
Hey!
a series of animated short films. I've been treating this like a very large multimedia creative and educational
I've seen that
adventure.
model before somewhere.
I've been doing research, writing notes,
It's the Kraken!
drawings, and making large clay sculptures for each of these films,
Ooh.
all compiled into one big sketchbook. The animated short films might be the end result, but there is so much more to these projects that you guys haven't seen yet. So let's get started.
This looks so elaborate. Oh, wow. Ooh. Did he make that? That looks so good. The Dinosauria Series by David James Armsby.
You probably know me from my Autodale animated series, and my recent experiences with those films are the reason the Dinosauria series exists. The Autodale films are becoming far too large and far too complicated for me to continue working on them to the standard that I was. Working on the most recent film in the series, Immortal Machine, was a
Mechanical Lady
experience for me, and I had to take a break. I wasn't in a good place, and to remind myself that animation was still something I wanted to do, I knew I needed to go back to basics. I needed to start a new film and make it about dinosaurs, because they are my favorite things in the world.
all days at once.
The Dinosauria series got off to a bit of a rocky start though. As you can see, the first page in my sketchbook does not say Old Buck in the top left corner. It says All Days. Old Buck is all the way on page 13.
Jeez.
All Days was going to be a very different film from what the Dinosauria series became. It was going to be a surreal, gritty, post-apocalyptic, dialogueless survival story about a group of human beings trying to survive an encounter with a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Ooh.
The film was set on an Earth that was recovering from some unnatural anomaly where all days happened at once. And after this mysterious science fiction cataclysm, the world is in ruins. It is now a patchwork, broken planet where all eras of Earth's history have been blended together, all meshing into one giant, unstable mega ecosystem of survival of the fittest across all time.
This sounds like the Land of the Lost, in a way.
Frankly, bizarre setting was never really going to be the focus, though. It was just going to be the backdrop to some fun, creative man versus prehistoric beast set pieces.
That's a nice T-Rex. What was that roar? No.
I even started thinking of making All Days into a series itself, each revealing just a little bit more about that mysterious cataclysm that caused all of this.
Interesting looking human.
Heavily inspired by the work of stop-motion animator and special effects titan Ray Harryhausen for this project. Ray Harryhausen's one of my favourite people. I've seen all of his films, and I recently got to see a lot of his stop-motion models in person.
Unicorn Caveman?
Which, for a cinephile, dino-obsessed animator like myself, was a pretty heckin' magical experience.
I'd like to see Stan Winston's stuff. That'd be fun. Not gonna lie.
Really close to making this film. I finished the sketchbook, I finished maybe half of the assets I required, I finished half the set, even going as far as doing some unfinished test animation based on some of my concept sketches. But after all of this work and research and drawing, I started to realise that this project was getting just as complicated and difficult and stressful as the Autodale series that I was putting on hold for being too complicated and difficult and stressful.
Oh,
I needed to make a
jeez.
film that was easier and simpler with minimal stress, something that was fun.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a
That
series,
brings us to page
you might as well
13.
make something that's not gonna cause you to overthink and get stressed and all that stuff. That's just
I
not
decided
good.
to make a simple film about two dinosaurs having a fight, and what inspired me to make this film about Styracosaurus albertensis over any other dinosaur was a very specific specimen that was described last year. UALVP55900, or Hannah.
That's much easier.
Hannah is an amazing Styracosaurus. Her skull is asymmetrical, the left side of her frill having more horns than her right, likely due to some injury during her development, and this,
Death the
alongside
Kid would not be
a bunch
happy.
of other recent ceratopsian research, has brought up a lot of questions
Old buck
about
frill!
dinosaur genus and species classification. Take Styracosaurus ovatus, also known as Rubeosaurus, for example. The main thing that made ovatus different from albertensis was its frill horn orientation, facing more inward than albertensis. But if albertensis can now have as much frill horn variation as an asymmetrical animal, how can we say for sure that ovatus isn't just another example of albertensis with inward-facing horns? That's the question that's
I
been
get
evolved
that.
recently, and at the moment, ovatus has been merged with albertensis as perhaps a juvenile or a female or an extreme morph of that species.
I'm curious if Path of Titans has Ovatus
Fellow
in the
Dino
Styracosaurus.
maniacs may have noticed that the main character in this film, the old buck, himself is based on Ovatus. His reveal shot proudly displaying his inward-facing horns.
Still beautiful watching this bit.
It was around about this time that David Silva's Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratops.
Hey!
This is an action figure line of science
I've got two of them.
dinosaurs, and I'm a big fan of them. I mention this because I bought these Styracosaurus figures specifically because I was working on this film, and having a highly posable model of the exact species I was going to animate in my hand proved surprisingly invaluable to the making of this film.
Now I'm kind of tempted to get
I
this
could easily
Styracosaurus
test out
and review it on the
poses and
channel.
camera angles without
Would you guys watch that?
time-consuming storyboards or previs or test animation. These stripes on the animal in the finished film are actually a direct reference to this toy.
Oh, little Easter egg! That's
So
cool!
discovered that you could get two of these toys together and test out some fighting moves. I legitimately choreographed the entire fight scene in this film, playing with these toys.
I don't know why, but it just seems so childish but I know that I was like this as a
If you
child.
follow my work, you'll know that I often make sculptures to accompany my animations, and I wanted to do the same thing here. I, of course, decided to sculpt a Styracosaurus. For most of the year, in Scotland, where I live, it's below 10 degrees Celsius and raining, but in spring, when I sculpted this, it can get to a lovely 20 degrees, so I could do a lot of the work in my garden, which is probably one of my favourite things to do.
Oh, wow.
This strange, fat, fluffy creature often joins me as well. I began my sculpture without an armature. Instead, I made a bunch of clay sausages in the shape of vague dino body parts, and once they were dry, I glued them all together in a vaguely ceratopsian shape, and then added more and more clay to bulk out the general shape of a Styracosaurus.
Oh, wow.
Anatomy
Look at that.
and musculature blocked out. For the surface detail, I use pre-made texture plates to make sheets of scaly skin to drape over the model, hiding the seams between each patch with pre-made texture stamps. Wrinkles and scars and all the other surface details are made with a multitude of different tools, but this one is my favourite. I'm pretty certain we don't have any skin impressions from Styracosaurus itself, but we do have skin impressions of Centrosaurus, which is a close enough relative. Centrosaurus has a rather
1 second.
typical ceratopsian scale pattern on its upper body. Uniform, smaller, round scales surrounded by semi-evenly spaced, less common, larger scales. A bit like this, and a bit like this. I'm not sure where this comes from, but most of my ceratopsian toys have square-shaped crocodilian-looking scales.
What's with
on
that
top,
Triceratops?
So I copied that for my model as well. For painting, I spray painted the model with a grey primer and used acrylic paints and brushes to mimic the colour scheme seen in
Oh my
with
god.
a mostly grey body, lighter stripes, and pink.
That looks so good.
And as per usual, while waiting for the paint to dry between coats, I highly recommend serenading the sculpture.
That's life, that's life, and I can't deny it.
That right there is the secret ingredient. I'm quite chuffed with this piece. I sculpt dinosaurs all the time. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid, but I feel I often default to exaggerating details and features because subtlety and realism is hard. This model, with its finer and more subtle skin details and realistic anatomy, really makes this guy feel alive to me in a way that my other dinosaur sculptures just kinda don't. He's one of my favourites so far. Absolutely rocking that pink eyeshadow, and of course having an asymmetrical frill as well.
Nice little Easter egg to the Hannah specimen. I like that.
Old Buck tells the story of a Styracosaurus, the alpha male in either a small herd or a small chunk of a mega herd. The old buck rests under a tree high above, a dominant, vigilant position. Twigs and foliage from the tree litter his frill like a crown, indicating that he's held this position for a very, very long time. A rival male enters the scene and tries to assert his dominance over the group, bullying a younger male and challenging the old buck. The outcome of this fight is foreshadowed the moment that this film starts. When the old buck is resting high above his herd, his body is shown to be covered in scars and his nasal horn is badly chipped. Over the course of the film, you get to see the kinds of actions that led to these injuries. Numerous rakings have scarred his sides, and numerous stabbings have chipped his horn. He has done this many, many times before.
Jesus, so he's impaled so many other Styracosaurus. That's why his horn's all banged up like
The
that.
finale of this film shows the old buck return to his post, utterly exhausted and with a fresh collection of scars. Still vigilant over his herd, but growing weaker and weaker.
Does that mean he dies? Art and animation.
This animated short film and the whole Dinosauria series is 3D animation, but I use a mix of 2D and 3D elements. I use a mix of Blender and Photoshop to achieve the look. Take this shot for example. I start with the 3D character models, which have been textured to look as 2D as I can possibly make them look. I make a simple mock-up of the scene and I animate that shot in Blender. I then paint the background and the foreground elements in Photoshop and drag them into the scene as well. Finally, I add whatever extra 2D animated elements are required on top. All of this is technically still in 3D space. Each shot looks a little something like this.
I don't know about that one Styracosaurus. He's bending his neck back. It looks like he's been possessed.
The themes of my short films are an aspect I care a lot about. Colour is a fantastic mood-setting and storytelling tool that in the animation medium specifically can be an incredible asset. The colour scheme of this film is a monochrome grayscale with red and pink highlights and a subtle baby blue added to the sky for a bit of contrast. This is quite stylised, it's not realistic, but I think the mostly grayscale colour palette with the red highlights reflects the primal, brutal animalistic nature of this territorial fight between two prehistoric beasts really well.
It really does work really well, you gotta admit.
This film takes place in Alberta, Canada, 75 million years ago. The star of this film, and the first animal featured, is the centrosaurine ceratopsid Styracosaurus albertensis. I wanted to create a decent amount of logical variation among my herd of Styracosaurus. We have 5 total unique models.
5?
A male, a female, a juvenile, the young buck, and the old buck.
Oh wow.
Putting all of the males together, the generic male, the younger buck, and the old buck next to each other, you can see a gradual increase in the boldness of the white stripes across the animal's back and horns as they age and become more sexually mature. The youngest individual having the least amount of stripes and the oldest individual having the most. Stripes that the juveniles and the females do not have at all. The old buck's frill is also pink, and in one of my favourite details of the film, the females and the other males do not have this pink accent at all, but all of the juveniles do.
Oh.
This subtly indicates that the old buck is indeed the dominant breeding male here. These are his kids, because they have his colours.
That's such an interesting little detail.
The old buck is loosely based on Rubeosaurus, as a reference to Styracosaurus ovatus becoming one with Albertensis. But perhaps a more interesting paleontological Easter egg is with the young buck. You may have already noticed this, but the young buck has an extra horn on his left side, and that's because I based him on that asymmetrical spot.
Oh, so this was Hannah.
Earlier.
Hannah. That it was based
Hannah
on.
had
Okay.
2 healed injuries to the left side of her frill.
That makes
likely
sense.
the cause of her asymmetry. So I made sure to add a visible pathology to the left side of the young buck's frill as well. A fun reference to the very fossil that inspired this film.
Oh, that's so good! This guy's really thought it all out!
The second of the 3 species featured in this film is the hadrosaur Lambeosaurus lambi. Now, Lambeosaurus only appears in like 6 shots and could have easily been cut from the film, with almost no change to the narrative whatsoever, but I really like dinosaurs, and Lambeosaurus is one of my favourite dinosaurs, so I had to put him in.
Makes sense, I guess.
This film takes place during the mating season, and the Lambeosaurus featured are a mating pair. I decided to depict the animal as sexually dimorphic to show this, with the male having a larger crest and the female...
I did notice this, I just forgot to point it out. So it was Daspletosaurus, alright. I was right.
Dinosaur, and it's the 3rd and final animal featured in the film. Even though I accidentally wrote Horneri in my sketchbook. Even though the animal only appears for like 10 seconds, I still tried to cram as many paleontological Easter eggs in there as I could. To start with, my model has some facial scars, a reference to the numerous bite marks we find on many Tyrannosaur skulls, likely inflicted by other Tyrannosaurs.
I remember this.
I also decided to give my Daspletosaurus lips. Now, lips or no lips on theropod dinosaurs, and specifically Tyrannosaurs, is a very controversial topic among the dino community, and Daspletosaurus is
He looks so derpy.
The pretty infamous paper published in 2017, which myself and many others aren't very convinced by. I personally think that lipped theropods is the slightly more accurate depiction at the moment, but either is fine. And finally, tyrannosaurs living in social groups is something that's been debated for a very long time, and again, Daspletosaurus is kind of at the heart of this debate, because a bone bed was found in Montana preserving 3 individual Daspletosaurus of different ages that were all feeding on hadrosaurs at the same time when they died. It's unclear as to whether or not this truly represents pack behaviour, or whether the individuals were totally unrelated and just gathered to take advantage of the same feast. In reference to this discovery in my film, I made sure to have 3 Daspletosaurus gather on the top of that hill, and I tried to keep it vague as to whether or not this is representing a social group, or 3 totally unrelated animals all taking advantage of the same situation.
No, that's nice. Evaluation. Alright.
I've talked about some of the paleontological bits and bobs that went into my creative decisions working on this film, but I'm not totally sure if I'd call this film particularly scientifically accurate as a whole. It's extremely hard to balance creative storytelling drama with real-life scientific fact. Those 2 things, more often than not, are at complete odds with each other. These films are fictional short films at the end of the day. They are not documentaries. I would like them to be, but they're not. They still have to have characters, conflict, a story, and a moral. They have to be dramatised to an extent. But I feel this film ended up a little bit too dramatised.
What?
I think the animals in this film are depicted as a little bit too intelligent and a bit too humanised. There is also no evidence to suggest that Styracosaurus had big violent fights like this at all, and the nature of the fight itself just seems far too over the top and violent to me.
Really?
Actually, my biggest problem with this film is the shock horror sudden impaling at the end.
Seriously?
I don't think this film is bad at all. I think it looks decent, it's animated well, I think it's a well-paced film with a beginning, a satisfying escalation, and an end and a point. But this film was conceived and choreographed by smashing 2 dinosaur toys together, and to me, it certainly shows.
I mean, yeah, I guess. It does kind of show, a little bit.
I'm sure, as I've showed with the research, the 3D models, the sculpture, the sketchbook, a lot of time and love still went into this project. I really enjoyed making this, and even though I'm not particularly proud of the finished film, I certainly look back at the experience with very pleasant feelings, which was the goal that I set out with. This film is extremely close to my dear old heart. Before this, I was working for months and months on a project that I hated, and I was seriously considering stopping. But this simple, fun dinosaur film reminded me that I still enjoy this. I mean, it was wonderful researching, feeling inspired, drawing, sculpting, and animating something I love again. In fact, I mean, I enjoyed working on Old Buck so much that it grew into a whole creative entity of its own. It spawned this entire series, becoming the first of 5 animated short films so far. And trust me, this is easily the weakest of the series in my opinion. The films just get better and better from here.
So what do we got here? Lots of Inventrix, because Troodon's not valid anymore. But that's really interesting. Like, ooh, it copied the ice falling and hitting the snow.
If you want to support me or read through the sketchbook I've been showing off in this video, you can. The sketchbook has just been uploaded to my Patreon page. You'll also gain access to updates on the Dinosauria series and gain early access to each of my animated short films 2 weeks before they're released here on YouTube. Probably unsurprisingly, this was the most fun I've had making a behind the scenes video in years. But, I mean, I knew that was going to happen. I was looking forward to this. I love talking about dinosaurs.
Who doesn't, right?
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go outside and film some B-roll for the outro. I'll be looking for, I don't know, the most interesting tree I can find.
Well, that sure is interesting. But anyway, I think that's the end. Oh. Well, I was right about one thing. This guy really has done his research, because as you just saw, he had like paleontological references, like the Hanna specimen, the Styracosaurus ovatus specimen, and all that. Whoa, that is so good. Although I am a bit shocked to hear that the maker of his own animation isn't... I'm trying to fix my hair so it's not in my face. That the animator himself wasn't like fully satisfied with this. That surprised me above anything else, in all honesty. When you do a project like this, I think you really have to give it your all, and I felt like this guy really did. I mean, in my opinion, I think he's kind of being modest, but the fact that he says the other short films that are going to be coming are apparently even better than this. Well, what else are we gonna see that could possibly top this? This is great. It's great animation. It's an amazing like character design and development, and the way he modeled these things, and then had like the sculpt of the Styracosaurus that he made. Oh, that was amazing. This is a project that has had a lot of love and effort put into it. And this is something that I wish I could do. I wish I had this kind of motivation to do something like that. That is something I think I could pride myself on. This Dinosauria series, it's a passion project, really, and I think it's really taken off. I enjoyed watching this making of the old buck thing, and I liked to hear that he kind of like pointed out some of the things he didn't like in his own animation, but like, here's the thing, and I guess you could say this about all YouTubers. Like, even though you didn't like the way it turned out, you still feel like you accomplished something, and the fact that you put it out there, that's just something that a lot of people don't do. Like, I keep on hearing this, and I totally agree with it, is that, like, you know, you never know what kind of content how people are going to react to your content, because you might think it's god awful, you might think it's absolutely ridiculous and you're lazy and things like that, but then you put it out there and people see it, and whether it crashes or burns determines like how you can do better, or things that like you might have missed, but you want to get back to. I mean, like, for example, I didn't point out that the Lambeosaurus in the short film were sexually dimorphic. I forgot to mention that, and I was thinking it, but I didn't bring it up, because I was talking about the Styracosaurus being sexually dimorphic, with the females having no stripes and the males having the stripes on their horns and on their back. And the research this guy's done, like, I'm a dinosaur nut, right? I love dinosaurs, but I'm not a scientist. I didn't know that specimens like Hanna and the ovatus Styracosaurus existed up until this making of video. I wish I had this kind of ability to do this sort of research, because this is amazing stuff. As I said before, like, a lot of YouTubers, they don't really do like a behind the scenes of how they make their videos, or in this case, animations. This one, though, it kind of feels like I'm watching a mini documentary on how a filmmaker makes their film. And even though the film is like 4 minutes long, the maker of this, David James Armsby, he's dedicated so much time and so much research and everything else he could into making this project, and it's amazing as hell. And you could see it in it. He's done his research. I mean, he even like does like subtle things to make it seem like, is it this or this? Like with the Duspledosaurus being either a social hunter or unrelated group that just want the same kill, or the Ovatus being another variant of Albertensis, or whatever. He's doing things that we see in other documentaries about dinosaurs, because again, we don't know everything about them, and we probably never will. But he's done his research, and you could tell that he has put a lot of love and effort into making this. And even then, he still felt like this fell flat in a way. I mean, with some of my videos, I felt like, I wish I could have done that better. Especially with my older ones, if you remember watching my early days of Jurassic World Alive and things like that. But again, like as time goes on, you get better with this. You improve upon what you've done in the past. Like, it's insane, really. Like the progress you can make over time, especially for us content creators, when we're making videos, and of course animators and filmmakers even. They learn from their mistakes most of the time, and they work to make it better. And that's what makes this sort of thing amazing. That someone realizes that they didn't really do their best, or there were some things that they wish they could have done better. They realize it, and then they improve upon it when they need to do it. Like, for example, this next episode that we're probably going to be getting, which I'm assuming from the trailer will have the Latina Venatrix. I'm assuming that's what it is, because Troodon isn't a valid species, and I'm pretty sure Latina Venatrix is the Alaskan genus of the Troodon. And I think this episode will have the Nanuqsaurus, which is an Alaskan feathered tyrannosaur, and the woolly Pachyrhinosaurus. I'd like to see the making of that and see like what his thought process was about that, because we know that the woolly Pachyrhinosaurus is not 100% fully accurate, because we don't know for sure if it had feathers like that. Yeah, I'm really excited about this Dinosauria series. I wish, again, that I could do something like this, but I can't, because I don't have that kind of dedication and passion for this. I love dinosaurs. That's always been my thing, but I could never show my love for them in the way that David James Armsby has done here. And I'm really at a loss for words. I'm blown away by this. In all honesty, I can't wait to see what happens next. This series looks like it's going to be fun, and I'm tickled pink by this. I don't know what else to say, so I think I'm actually just going to wrap up the video here before I continue rambling on and on and on and on and on about how this is amazing. But anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like, subscribe today, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything new. Link to the Discord in the description down below, as well as the whole video that we were just watching in the description down below without my commentary, so you can check that out on your own. And until next time, this is Tyrannosenpai signing off. Alrighty then, take care now. Bye-bye then.